Mhm.
Well, we don't need it tonight.
All
So,
right, we're live. Good evening. Good evening, lunatics. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. We are going to talk about OPS tonight. Um, this is going to be um, a follow up. So we did episode 108 where we talked about the system, right? And we explained to you how it worked, and we gave you the why excuse me, why we have used OPS since 2009. Tonight we're going to talk about a little more in depth of how you take your sample, when you take your sample, the maintenance schedule, how to read the sample, that kind of stuff. So that's what this episode's going to be about. We'll take your questions as we go along. Um, Anything to catch up on from this week?
is that a question for me?
Yeah,
No, I don't think so.
I
Um,
I did
we
a I did an interview with the Pro Miles podcast. They just started it. They've got a few episodes out. Pretty interesting people. They've been into IFTA and fuel reporting and navigation and back in the day helping people get their authorities. Pretty cool guy. It was a fun conversation. It'll probably be out in a week or so. We had a good talk. Um, we we had some excitement. Had one of our trucks get run over in a truck stop. That was the first. Um, Says Larry's mic's real hot, which I was kind of noticing. It's kind of burning me up a little bit, but
I just pulled it away. Is that better?
yeah, it's probably better. You're probably a little
Okay.
close. Um,
Listen, you take that in that comment right there. Instead of Larry's mic is real hot. Just leave out the word mic.
Easy now. Um, in all my years of driving, I don't think I've ever been hit in a truck stop. I got backed into from the back, like trailer to trailer, one time, and that was a hell of a wake up call. But one of our guys got his headlight ripped out, and so that was an exciting 2 o'clock in the morning phone call. But we got that resolved pretty quick, so that was a good deal. So truck's not going to be down, but really a few days, really, So could be worse. I saw a guy at the TA the other day. Somebody got his whole front end. I mean, they took out the charge air cooler, took out the radiator, grill, headlights. I mean,
I
just
where I used to park at that TA at Exit 4 in Indianapolis. That's where I parked all day, a couple days a week. And I woke up I drove at night, remember? So I woke up one afternoon to go get ready to get my day started. And somebody had backed into the front of a Peterbilt 379 with all the chrome,
mm,
and the guy he was just it was pitiful. He was just crying. He laid it all out on the parking lot. The way it would look if it were back up there. He had all
yeah,
reconstructed on the parking lot, taking pictures of it, tears coming down his eyes.
yeah.
So
It's I mean, it can be devastating. I mean, it's as we all know, that trip to the body shop is never a quick one. And so, the first I was thinking today that I backed into a guy. I probably haven't been driving a month, and there used to be little tiny truck stop off of Exit 3 I-70 in Maryland, Hancock Truck Plaza, and it was pouring rain, and I was trying to blindside, and I finally gave up, so I just pulled off. Well, I didn't realize that I had backed into a bull hauler of all people, but I had no
mm,
idea.
yeah.
So I pull around, finally found a place to park, and I go inside and I tap on my shoulder and I turn around and I look down, because he's about 5'6", got that cowboy hat and that Western button-up shirt. Hey, you driving that whatever Pete truck out there? Yeah, you just backed into my truck. I'm like, oh shit, and I went out there. I put a little scratch about that long on his fender of his 379 Peterbilt and knocked the oil cap off. But he was a pretty understanding guy. He's like, "Listen, son, if this is the worst that ever happened to you, you'll be all right."
Yeah.
So, but
Well, we had a little talk with our driver about parking in last in the row too. So
yeah, that's always
I would never do that. I mean, I heard everybody talking about it, and I think my trainer pretty much ingrained it in me that That's not where you want to be, that last spot. So fortunately for me, it didn't matter. Listen, when I parked, I had the whole parking lot. Okay.
Yeah.
So, because at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, all you guys are out working. So I didn't have any problem with that. I could park where the hell I want to. So the problem with me, though, is I'd find a place I like, and then it wouldn't be 30 minutes and some damn reefer would pull in next to me, and sit there, I'm like, dude, there's 5 acres out here, and you had to park next to me, Anyway.
Yeah.
So, well, to get back on the topic here, the first 3 things I ever did when I bought my truck for fuel mileage modification was I bought the Pittsburgh Power Muffler, the Fleet Air Filter, and the OPS. Now, I was going to start out tonight saying the OPS was the first thing I did, but that's not true because it took me a long time to find somebody to install it. As a matter of fact, I had to get 2 people to install it because the place I went to get it installed, they broke 15 drill bits drilling through the frame.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figured they got the bracket mounted, and I had to go. I had to leave. Okay, so I ended up carrying the unit around with me in the truck for a couple of weeks before I could find another place to actually get it put on. So it was the third thing I did. But these are the products that started my relationship with Bruce and Pittsburgh Power way back in 2009. And so these are the things that I did. And of course, like we know, I mean, everything I learned from the guys that go into the CMC and networking that we had there. But anyway, this is one of the ones that we recommend for everybody. It doesn't matter what kind of truck you drive, because all we're doing here is improving the filtration of your oil. That's one of the things we're doing. But the other thing is we also have a program here where the process of sampling the oil and the maintenance intervals gives you a good way of knowing what the condition of your engine is. And so we've saved a lot of motors here because we knew that we had a problem long before the problem became catastrophic. And so and that's the benefit. Of course, the poster child of this whole program is, of course, my green truck that we call Metro, or we have other names for it, but the truck that had 1.8 million miles on it when we took it off the road, and in those 1.8 million miles, it only had the oil change 4 times. So that's the poster child. That's actually why we got contacted from Pittsburgh Power to sponsor the podcast, was that they knew that was the truck that I was talking about. So I remember the guy in the shop going, "Oh yeah, that Mercedes was yours?" I'm like, yeah, still is.
Well, one thing, you'll have the conversation or the debate about extended drains, and people get real funny about it. But take that and set it to the side for a second. Just doing the oil samples gives you information from inside your engine that you're not going to get any other way. So even aside from the filtration benefits and the ability to do extended drains, the ease and the convenience of being able to push that little button on the side of that filter head and pull that sample every 25,000 miles and find out what's going on inside your engine's priceless, because it will save you from or can save you from catastrophic failure. And we've seen it, oil fuel dilution and coolant intrusion and all kinds of stuff that you're just not going to know. And we're sending it to a high quality lab. We're not using the benchtop machine at the Speedco. We're sending it to a real lab with people in lab coats and science and calculators and pocket protectors. Nerds.
Yeah,
and they're going into the parts per million.
Yeah.
So
well, we have a friend that just called us this week, that had new injectors put in his truck, and he's one of our OPS customers. So he did an oil sample, and it came back, and he still had. Well, matter of fact, the fuel intrusion doubled after he put the injectors in. He was asking me. I said, "Dude, I can tell you exactly what it is. You've got a streaming injector. You've likely got a bad injector, or you've got a bad install, because we know who did it." So I said, it's one or the other. It's an injector problem. And sure enough, he took it back, and they tested, and 3 of the injectors out of the 6 were bad and were streaming. So it doubled. Now, had he not sampled his oil, and he wouldn't have sampled his oil if he weren't an OPS customer, he'd have been driving that truck around with 3 injectors streaming. How long would it take to get a high enough fuel intrusion in that oil to blow that motor up? So it's not.
And the truck was running fine. He put a 6-pack in it because it wasn't running well. So they put the 6 injectors. Well, hey, now it's running great. And that's why I asked him when, he was like, well, it was running fine. I said, was your fuel mileage okay? Yeah, fuel mileage is fine. Well, 3 bad injectors, that over time, if left alone at that rate of fuel dilution, will cook the bearings and ruin that motor.
Oh, absolutely. And if it doesn't blow up first. So you can only get so much fuel dilution in that engine, and then the heat of the motor and the combustion are going to blow it up. So it's just a matter of when the oil gets volatile enough to explode. So, well, anyway, we sell OPSs. We're a distributor, and we feel like we've got people that are buying the product because we promote it, and they buy it for the benefit of the filtration, but we're not sure that they're taking it. And we even know, because we've asked some of them. We've got some mentoring clients that are using OPS, and some of those guys aren't fully utilizing all the capabilities. So that's why we thought we would have this further discussion about it. After you put it on there and start using it, what do you do next? So that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. But for those of you that are listening or watching and you haven't seen the OPS demonstration or the OPS explanation, we're going to kind of go through it, hit the high spots. We're not going to do the entire. You can go back to 108 and get it in depth, but we're going to hit the high spots, and just so that if you don't know what it is, you can at least get something out of this hour without knowing what the hell these guys talking about. So I watch our shorts, and guys all the time going, what is an OBS? What are you talking about? What is that? So we'll talk about what it is a little bit, and then we'll talk about what it does and all the benefits, and there's layers of benefits, and there's really 3 or 4 major benefits for doing it. So anyway, I've got the slides from 108. We're gonna hit on a couple. We're not gonna go through all of them. We're gonna hit on a couple of them, just so that you can kind of follow along if you're watching. If you're listening, we'll verbalize everything, so you won't be left in the dark. I guess we should start the podcast out with our sponsor. Pittsburgh Power is our primary sponsor. When I bought the OPS was a standalone company. Now, Pittsburgh Power has bought OPS in the last year or so, so now it is their product. They own it, but at one time, it was not. But the OPS is manufactured and inventoried and all that sort of stuff at Pittsburgh Power. And so if after listening to this tonight, if you decide that you want to take advantage of this product, you can go to our website and order it, and it's shipped the next day. Usually it's shipped overnight, so you have it within a day or two anyway. And so let's start out in case people don't know what it looks like. Chris, how do I make this? Here we go. Let's do this. There we go. So that's what the unit looks like if you're watching. It's basically a filter head. This black part up here is a filter head that mounts to the frame, and in that filter head is a heated chamber. And so there's you have to have a power source to go into this, because that heated chamber that evaporates the liquid contaminants is housed in that black top section, And of course, that bottom section is just a big 10-inch spin-on filter. And we'll talk about what's different about that as we go along. So we'll touch on how it works and how we use it and what's it cost and should you do it or not, and how to find one. So OPS stands for Oil Purification System. This system is called EcoPure, and it is basically just an onboard refining system. A lot of people are surprised when they find out that the oil that they drain out of their motors that goes into the ground, it's not disposed of. I mean, it is disposed of, but it's not thrown away. A refining company comes by and buys that, and they use it for a couple of things. Some of them use it for heating oil, but a lot of the people refine that and sell it as private label oil. When you go in the truck stop, when you're buying, or even at a gas station for your car, those private label oil, that's what that is. It's remanufactured, refined, processed oil that has been used before. So you're just doing it yourself. You're doing it on the truck as you go along, and it's you're just doing it yourself instead of dropping the oil and throwing it away and having somebody else do it. The truck that we're talking about is a 2007 Columbia with a Mercedes motor. I bought the truck in 2009, put the OPS on it at that time. At the time, it had just under 300,000 miles on it. We put a total of 1.85 million miles on that truck. And then the time that we put those miles on there, or I put those miles on there, I changed the oil 4 times. So you're not reading that wrong. It's had 4 oil changes. So we'll go on and talk about that as we go along here. That 10-inch filter, now you see 3 different sizes there because an OPS can be used on a lawnmower or your pickup truck or whatever. So depending on the length of time you want to do the oil sampling, the 10-inch is the biggest filter. In a diesel truck where you've got 11 gallons of oil, that filter surface gives you 25,000 miles between filter changes. That's why we use it. Now, the difference between this spin-on filter and one that you might that you might have now is that it removes the oil, particles down to 3 microns. A lot of filters only take the filtration like in the 50 micron range, 40 or 50. It's very common. So we're taking it down to a very, very, very small filtration, and we can do that because we're not putting all the oil through it at the same time. With it being a bypass filtration, we're only taking a little bit at a time and filtered down to 3 microns. Because if we took it all at one time, like your full flow filters do, you wouldn't have any oil pressure. So that would be a huge problem. So by doing it as a secondary filtration, we can filter it down and get most all the solids out with the spin-on filter. Now, I said earlier that the liquid contaminants, think condensation and if you have an intrusion, a fuel or coolant, those are evaporated out through that top of that unit. And so we're doing double filtration here. We're taking the liquids out, and then we're also taking the solids out. So now we're putting the oil back in the engine, completely processed and clean. And in the course of a day, all 11 gallons get run through this system. So every morning you're starting out with clean oil. So there's never a time when you've got dirty oil in that engine. So we had a question that just works out really, really good right here. And that is that, do you think the OPS was the main contributing factor in having that Mercedes run to 1.8 million miles? Absolutely. There's no other. I mean, I've talked to lots of people who have Mercedes trucks. I've talked to lots of mechanics who work on them. The average mileage between for an end frame on a Mercedes engine is between 600,000 and 800,000 miles. We got 3 times that. And there's no way you can convince me that it's anything other than well, yeah. I mean, this is the primary thing. I took care of my stuff, and so I didn't abuse it. I got really good fuel mileage in the truck because I didn't abuse it. But the only thing you could really say that's the difference between mine and anybody else's is that it started every day from 300,000 miles to 1.8 million with clean oil every day. Now, we're not going to talk about the Fast and Light because that's a different product, but it also had a fuel air separator system in the fuel system because besides not changing the oil very many times, it never had the injectors changed. It had the same injectors in it. Today, it was born with. And those have 1.8 million miles on the original injectors. So I have to think that the Fast system, which is kind of the OPS equivalent in the fuel system, is a reason for that. So, but that is definitely my answer to your question, Evan. No question about it. So let's move on to another slide. Talked about if your primary filters tried to filter down to 3 microns, you wouldn't have any oil pressure. So that's why you can't do it with the full flow system. Now, a lot of newer trucks now have secondary oil filtration on them. That's why they're extending the drains now to 50,000 miles and up. So it's doing the same thing. They're just doing it for you. But still, that's one thing. But if you're doing that and you're not doing the sampling program, you're still missing way over half the benefit of doing it. And I don't know of anybody that's got an onboard bypass system that's sampling their. Well, I can't say anybody, but you don't meet very many people that are doing it. So anyway, we'll. What makes the OPS better? Well, there's other ones out there, but OPS is the only one that does the liquid evaporation. So that's why we choose to do it. Dual filtration. The solids trapped in the 3 micron spin-on filter, the liquid contaminants are evaporated in the heated chamber. So in the course of a day, all 11 gallons are filtered through these 2 filters. And so that every day you start over again with clean oil. When you start the motor up in the morning, it's just like it was, just like it was clean. So just think about if you change your oil every day. I mean, all these guys that get super excited because I change my oil every 12,000 miles or 15,000 miles and throw all that oil and all that money down the drain. You're getting the same benefit here without doing that, without throwing the money away. You know me, it's all about the money, right? So the benefit number 1 is your oil is always clean and fresh, always. You're never going to have any contamination or any dirt in your oil because it's cleaned every day. So that's the big benefit. And we'll talk about a extended benefit of that at the end. Now, extended drains. We'll talk about that. This was controversial back in 2009. It's not so much now because even the manufacturers are suggesting extended drains. Because their filtration has gotten much better. But the thing about filtration is this. Okay, somewhere along the way, somebody decided that oil needed to be changed at certain intervals. Now we can kind of imagine who that is and what their interests were as why they would recommend that. They wouldn't be in the business of selling oil or maybe selling repairs, would they? So they decided that it would be best if you changed your oil every fill in the blank, 12,000, 15,000, whatever the interval was. I know you talk a lot of guys that the more they change it, the better they think they're doing for their truck, and in fact they are. But the problem with it is nobody takes the time to sample what came out. You're throwing all the evidence of whatever's wrong with your motor down the drain, not looking at it. So the part of this program that's critical is at the extended drain level, whatever you choose. We choose 25,000 because we know for a fact that spin-on filter will filter up to 25,000 miles, but and still be effective. But at that time, we change that filter. We pull an oil sample, and we send the sample to the lab. That's the critical part here. That's the second big benefit here, because now you know what your engine what it's looking like. We're measuring things in parts per million, So if you've got coolant, you've got fuel, you've got soot, you've got water, you've got bearing wear. You've got you're showing up with lead and copper and iron and stuff in your motor at higher parts per million than are supposed to be there. You know that you've got something going on. Now, it may take a little detective work to figure out what, but at least you know something's going on. Because you got the lab sample. It's in black and white in front of you. And now you can take whatever measures you need to correct that. And if the oil is damaged to the extent that it's no longer doing its job, then you know to change the oil. But if it's not, if the sample comes back perfectly fine, there's no reason to throw that oil away and start over again. If the oil has been in the ground a long time, all right, it doesn't get bad just because all of a sudden you decide to put it in a truck and drive 15,000 miles. So now there's some components about it that do wear out, but we can fix that. We can replenish those without throwing 11 gallons of oil away. One of the other big advantages that we have is because since we don't throw oil away, we can afford to use a higher quality oil. We use only full synthetic. We particularly use Shell Rotella T6, but doesn't really matter. But there's distinct advantages in using full synthetic oil. All major luxury cars, all performance cars, suggest that you use full synthetic oil. So obviously there's an engineering a reason for them recommending that. Guys don't use it in trucks because it's $50 a gallon. And if you're going to throw it away over 15, 20,000 miles, it just doesn't make any sense. But if you're not going to throw that oil away, now all of a sudden you can afford to put that oil in there because you're not going to throw it away. And now you get the added benefit of having a better oil in your truck, better for the motor, easier starts in cold weather, better fuel mileage, all the things that come with using full synthetic oil. So this is again another statement of what we did. We had an 07 Columbia that has 1.85 million miles on the original engine, no end frame, and the OPS was installed when it had about 300,000 miles. The filter was changed every 25,000 miles, and the lab sample was taken. Now, here's what I want you to listen to. Never did the lab report come back and tell me that the oil needed to be changed. Never. I changed it over the years with those 4 times just to try a different oil, because again, we're part of this network team where we were trying to find best practices. And how people are about oil. So like Ford and Chevy or blue and red, well, this oil's better, that oil's better. So we tried the different oils, and number one, there is no difference. I mean, oil is oil. We couldn't find any measurable difference between any brand of oil. Now, I certainly could between viscosities, but that was just part of the a part of our experimental process was to try different lubricants. So that's why I changed the oil in those 4 times. My oil never came back needing to be changed. Now, again, I took very good care of the truck. I had a fast system, so the injectors never streamed. I'm still in the truck. So that's the big benefit here, is that going back to Evan's question, by keeping the oil clean. I mean, every morning you wake up, you've got clean oil. You tend to get a lot more mileage out of the components because you're not running them dirty. Here's the thing about these arbitrary change your oil at 15,000 miles. So what if the oil did get contaminated at 10,000 miles? So now you're running it dirty for 5,000 miles and don't even know it, and doing whatever damage it's doing to your motor. Okay. That's the beauty of the lab sample, is it tells you without any question the peace of mind that comes with, like going to the doctor and getting a checkup, and you go, dude, everything's good. All your tests came back good. It's the same thing for your truck, peace of mind knowing that you don't have anything going on that you don't know about, because we're measuring everything in that oil down to parts per million. So that's a pretty good, whatever story right there. So now the another big thing, and of course, I'm a numbers guy. I've been told that. I don't think it's a compliment, but from most people. But let's talk
That's
about
absolutely a compliment.
Let's talk about the numbers here, okay? Because numbers do matter, okay? The normal truck owner, and again, remember, I did this in 2009, so these numbers have probably changed a little bit because people are not changing their oil as often now because they don't have to. Newer trucks because they've got some bypass filtration involved. But back in the day, 15,000 was the big number. Everybody changed their oil at about 15,000 miles. Some did it at 12, some did it at 25. But anyway, we're going to use 15 because that was the average. The average truck owner drives about 100,000 miles a year. So if you follow along here, a typical oil change, and I priced this about a year ago, is $365 for just regular non-synthetic oil. Okay. So at 15,000 mile intervals, at 100,000 miles driven a year, that's about $2,500 per year in oil changes or PMs for regular mineral oil. Now, if you had been using the OPS system with extended drains, lab test, and filter only changes at 25,000 mile intervals, that cost would have automatically dropped to $500 a year. Okay. So right there's $2,000 right away in the first year just in oil changes. Now, you got to deduct the cost of the unit and installation, which is about $1,200. So you really only had a first year savings of $800. But every other year after that, you're not having to do the installation and buy the unit again. So the $2,000 per year applies to years 2 and beyond. I mean, look, that was done in 2009. This is 2022. Now the truck hasn't been on the road for a year, so go back to 20. Well, actually, it was taken off the road in January of 2022. So it's from 2009 to 2022.
21.
What is it?
21.
21. Okay, 2009 to 21 is 12 years. So in 12 years, times $2,000 a year. I mean, no, it's not chump change, but that's not the big factor. Okay. That's not the big savings. Let's look at this slide. Okay. So how much money did the OPS system save me during the life of the truck? So I would have had 150 normal oil changes in its life in those 12 years if I did it the way everybody else was doing it, every 15,000 miles. I would have spent about $55,000 on all those 150 oil changes in the life of that truck. We all agreed that it would never have gotten 1.85 million miles out of the engine in an MBE 4000, which has an average lifespan of 600,000 to 800,000 miles. Okay. In fact, I would likely have had to have done 2 overhauls in 1.85 million miles. I was able to use full synthetic oil since I wasn't throwing the oil away, which improved the fuel mileage. The fuel mileage on that truck when I drove it most of the time was between 8 and 9 miles per gallon. 9.2 was the average for most of its life. So let's look at the numbers here, okay? Oil changes versus OPS services. 150 of them at $365 versus 74 of them at $125. So just the difference in the PMs themselves, $45,000. 2 engine overhauls at 25 to 30 grand each, another $55,000. The fuel improvement with full synthetic oil for 1.5 million miles, $42,000. So the savings in the life of that truck was $142,500. Enough to go buy a truck. Saved enough money to buy a truck, just in how I changed or didn't change oil. So that's the big thing. Okay, that's the big thing is that you guys, you're changing your oil at regular intervals because that's what somebody's told you to do. We're not checking to see if that oil is good, bad, or indifferent. We're just throwing it down the drain, and we're also throwing $300 or $500 at a time down the drain with it, when it may not be necessary. So the lab sample part of this product is where we find out whether the oil is being thrown away for no reason or not. So that's why the lab sample part of this is so critical. So benefit number 2 is you can extend your drains. You can extend them as long as the lab tells you can. And people ask, well, how long do I go? Well, you go until the lab tells you that you need to change the oil, because unless it's contaminated, there's no reason to change it. So stop throwing away perfectly good oil. Know what's going on in your motor and use a better quality oil, and all the same time saving money. I mean, it's almost like even a truck driver can understand this, I think. So by using a better quality oil, full synthetic is a superior product, you're going to treat your engine better. You're going to get better fuel mileage. Okay. You're going to have longer lasting components. Here's the thing about oil. All right. Tell me when it goes bad. I mean, tell me at what point in time it literally gets to the point where you're not supposed to use it anymore. There's lots of trucks out there with OPSs on them with 400,000 plus miles on them. Okay. So that's a huge savings. 400,000 miles is 4 years. Not doing an oil change in 4 years is a lot of money. It can make up for a lot of expenses. If you just put the money away that you were spending on oil changes, you'd have enough money. You saw the slide back there. In the lifetime, I could have bought a truck for $142,000 in the time I used this product. So if you were saving that money instead of throwing it away, look at what you'd have. Now, here's the thing about the oil. The oil itself never goes bad. If it went bad, they wouldn't be able to refine it and put it back on the shelf if the oil is bad. All they do is clean it up and put the additive package back in it. So all we have to do is if we have a extended drain and the additive package is starting to wear down, we just put fresh oil in it. Unless you've got a brand new truck that's so tight that never uses any oil. I mean, all trucks use some oil. Okay. That's not a bad thing. In this program, that's how you keep the oil freshened up, is by adding what we call makeup oil. So if you have to put in a gallon or two between oil changes or between filter changes, in our case, in lab samples, you're just sweetening that oil up, so you're putting the additive package back in it, and it's good to go. And we're going to measure all that in the lab sample, and we're going to show you some of those. So now, if you've got a brand new motor and it doesn't use any oil at all, well, look, you may have to drain a gallon out and put a gallon in. But still, you're not throwing away 11 gallons. You're throwing away 1 gallon, and you're putting another gallon in just to get the additive package back in it. Another thing, and we didn't even have this when I made this slideshow, but we are testing right now what's called a base booster. A lot of times what goes on the oil is it doesn't lose the additive package. It loses the base. It loses the ability to offset acid. So just putting a fresh gallon of oil in there gets the base back to it, the base number. Well, now we have a product called Base Booster that is going to be available pretty soon, I'm sure, that little bottle will put the base back in it. We don't have to drain the gallon out. So we might have a solution for that anyway coming up very soon. So the oil itself doesn't go bad. It works in a horrible environmental condition. Diesels are dirty motors. They make a lot of soot. There's a lot of dirty air out there that you guys drive in. So all these additives in the motor, they just wear down. That's the only thing that goes wrong with the oil. The oil doesn't go bad. It's just we need to get the dirt out and the additives back in it. Well, if we filter it down to 5 or 3 microns, we're going to get the dirt out. All right. And if we put fresh oil back into it, we're going to get additives back in there. So now we're replenishing this oil in our own little system without having to throw the oil away. I mean, the oil that we put, you can test your oil. You can test oil out of a brand new bottle, and they're going to be very, very, very similar. So, I don't think we need to go over that one. So, benefit number 3: extend the life of your motor. Getting back to Evan's question, there's no question that. I did this. We did a YouTube short about this, and I mean, we had like 200 comments on it. Most of them were calling bullshit because of that 1.8. Now, I don't reply to those things. I'll just let them lay around in their own misery. But it's a fact. I mean, it is a fact. We're going to show you the oil sample. Okay, it is a fact. And was it just a fluke thing? I don't think so. Just think about it. I mean, if you guys feel good about changing oil over 15,000 miles or 25 or 50,000 miles, think about changing it every day. The benefit of having clean oil every day. Think about what that's doing for you. So, Chris, let's get to some of the oil samples. Do we have any questions we need to talk about first?
Couple. You know what? This is kind of like Jerry Lewis Telethon. We just had a sale. I need a bell to go off because we just sold an OPS right now.
Well,
so
good deal.
We need 2 or 3 more. So y'all come on, just go to the website. Well, yeah. Well, let's. Do you have the same results with the other trucks? I guess in results you're probably talking about extended life of engine. Yes. We will show you an oil sample here in a minute where we had coolant intrusion show up. And we wouldn't have known that any other way. And so we immediately parked the truck. Turned out to be a head gasket. We put a head gasket on it. And that truck still runs today. So if not for that oil sample telling us that we had coolant intrusion, we would have just gone until the motor blew up.
So keep in mind, and we buy trucks that have lots of miles. I started this at 300,000 miles, so the truck was fairly new, and that's its whole life. That's all it ever had. We buy trucks that already have 1 million miles on them, and even the end frame may have been done. But the big advantage for us, like you just said, yes, extending the life of the motor is good, but the bigger thing is knowing when something's wrong. Because we do this every 20, and we're going to show you our maintenance interval. We do this every 25,000 miles with a lab sample. We know, I mean, think about this, okay? In 25,000 miles, we know if something's happened. Because if it's different than the previous lab sample, something's changed. So what harm can be done in 25,000 miles that for someone who's not doing any testing at all drives for a year, and before it finally presents the symptoms that you start looking for. So we find and that's assuming that whatever happened on day 1 after we did the previous lab sample. So somewhere in that 25,000 mile interval, which is about 6 weeks for us, if something changes, we know it. And usually when things change, they change gradually. Like if you get fuel intrusion, it's usually not a big thing unless you're like Randy and get 3 bad injectors. Usually it starts out as a trickle and you go, well, that's a little high. I wonder why. And the next time it's a little higher. And next time it's a little higher. And you go, wait a minute, something's going on here. So then you start looking. And then after you can start predicting where some of these things are coming from. The symptoms themselves point you in a direction. You can kind of tell if something's, like fuel pump related or injector related. You kind of have a better idea, of where to start looking without just starting to throw parts at it. And of course, the other thing is, like if we have, like with Randy, all of a sudden he found out that he had a huge fuel injection. And I said, Randy, if you can't get that in right away, go throw a gallon of Lucas in there, at least protect the bearings and stuff, would never have known that. He would never have known that. He would have ruined that motor with 3 bad injectors and not known about it till it's too late, So that's the big thing. So does it work for our trucks now? It does. Absolutely. None of these trucks had it from day 1, like mine did. But they all get the benefit of knowing that every 25,000 miles, we know what's going on in that motor. And we have saved a lot of motors because of that. Because we know that
this motor the example with the coolant intrusion, that was a junkyard motor. We bought that engine used and put it in the truck, and it was probably a year later, after we put the motor in, that coolant intrusion shows up, and put a head gasket on it. We didn't have to tear it down, I don't even think he took the head off. I think he raised the head up, pulled the gasket out, slid that, and and it was
Yeah.
done.
Let's do the next one, Chris. This one here. So the OPS system is it $8.95 on our website?
Let me look at this email that just came in. I'll tell you. It is $8.99.
$8.99 plus tax and shipping, and well, there's no tax. There's no tax on it. It's just shipping.
Yeah, $9.39 shipped.
Yeah, $9.39 shipped. The sample kits. Okay, it cost about and Chris, we you might have to help me. Well, I got it right here. I want to make sure I give you the most recent prices. Went up a little bit first of the year, so let me make sure I'm giving you the exact prices. I probably should have had this prepared.
Well, and while you're looking for that, the OPS starter kit comes with 3 filters, 2 sample kits, the OPS system, and the install kit. That's what you're getting, so that you can install it, you get a filter, and then you're good for 2 oil changes. So you're basically good for 50,000 miles because you get 2 filters and you get 2 sample kits with it.
Well, not oil changes. You 2 filter changes.
I meant, not, 2 filter changes.
So filters, to answer your question, filters are $55 and the lab kits fit. So it's $110 to do the lab sample and to change the green filter. It's $110. So you're going to do that every 25,000 miles, as opposed to whatever it costs to change your oil now, and not getting the lab sample. So I'm guessing it's about $400. It was $365 a year ago when I called around and got the average price. And again, you can use full synthetic oil because you're not going to throw it away. So you get all the benefit. It's going to cost you $110 to do the sample. So so I answered your question. How do you guys wire the what?
Basically, how do you wire it up to run, and where on the engine do you tap in for the oil line? So all engines have an oil galley, and you're just going to pull a plug out, plug that line into it. It's going to run to the OPS. Remember that the OPS does not pump oil. It's fed by oil pressure from the oil pump, from the engine. So the oil is pushed through by the engine. The heater part that's in the head on most trucks just connects to the alternator because that's ignition power. You turn the ignition on, the heater fires up. You turn the ignition off, it shuts down. Right.
And there's 2 little lights on the top of it to let you know that you've got power. So you can kind of tell, making sure that power's running. But yeah, it's fed with oil pressure from the motor. And then and listen, there are several videos on Pittsburgh Power's website that can walk you through the installation. If you've got any mechanical ability at all, the hardest part about doing this is drilling the holes in the frame. Okay. Once you get past that, it's not hard to install at all. And like you said, most engines have oil galleys that already have a plug in there that you're just going to take out and replace with a fitting.
And then it's going to return the oil to the oil pan. So you're taking a plug out of the oil pan, and that's how the oil, after it's filtered, it just dumps it into the oil pan to be picked up by the oil pump.
Chris, we have DD15 on the site.
I fixed it. Okay. We did not. Yeah. I fixed it. That's the one that just bought one.
Okay. Yeah, we have. It has a different installation kit for whatever motor you got, and you can put on anything. So we can do that.
Could you send in an oil for a lab report when not using the OPS system, like when purchasing a truck? Yes, you can. Now, got to keep in mind, though, if that oil's brand new, if somebody has just changed the oil, it's not going to do you much good, you know. And so we have sent samples in, but you ask somebody that's buying it, that's selling a truck, have you changed the oil yet? Or are they going to tell you the truth? Who knows?
Well, most people think it's advantage to say they did because that it's a selling point. It's already been serviced. Back when we were buying trucks all the time, the first question I'd ask him, have you changed the oil? Is there any chance that the old oil's still in there? And I would say, look, please don't change it. Okay. And I would pay them. I would send them an oil sample kit and have them do an oil sample before I go look at the truck. But it definitely was a screening device for us when we were looking at buying trucks.
And I know of one truck I went to look at in Ohio, and we pulled an oil sample, and it had coolant intrusion, so we didn't buy it.
Yep.
I'm gonna skip one. Looking to trade an in and out combo of your choice for an OPS contact fill. That's for you, I think.
We need to screen. We need to screen our listeners a little bit better.
So if I just use synthetic oil, I benefit and don't need the OPS. Well, listen, listening is a skill. The whole point of this is dual filtration. It doesn't matter what kind of oil you run. You can run mineral oil out of the ground, or you can run synthetic oil. It doesn't matter. The benefit of the OPS system, oil purification system, is that you get 2 levels of filtration, down to 3 microns. Well, that doesn't matter what kind of oil is going through it. And you get the liquid contaminants removed by the heater. So, no, just because you use synthetic oil doesn't mean you're not getting the benefit, period. Because how are you sampling? Are you going to sample that? Are you getting the filtration? Are you getting the liquid contaminants removed? No, you're not. So, and I'm going to go ahead and hit this just for, when you say oil's oil and it's been in the ground forever, and then you say use synthetic, you're contradicting yourself. No, he's not. He's absolutely 100% not contradicting himself, because the argument is always, well, I can just use regular oil. Well, sure you can. You absolutely can use regular oil. The point being that if that oil gets dirty, it's not necessarily no longer oil and it's no longer bad just because it's dirty. We use synthetic oil as a bonus to having an OPS because we don't have to throw good oil away. But I know plenty of people that use Delvac 1540 with their OPS setup because they just choose not to use synthetic, and that's perfectly fine. It's a calculated, back to the BSC 9000. It's a calculation that we make that we can afford to buy higher quality oil that retail right now is $55 a gallon, because we don't have to throw it away. We sample it, we check it, and this oil can stay in the truck for 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 miles.
Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Go back to the first question, because the question itself is very easy to answer. Anybody can use synthetic oil, and there's a benefit. There's no question about it. You don't have to have an OPS to use synthetic oil, but at $55 a gallon, how practical is it for you when you're going to throw it away when you change oil next time? There's no question that using synthetic oil is a better product. Okay, I don't think there's any debate about that left, unless you're living under a rock somewhere. The problem with it in a big truck is that you change oil so often that it makes an oil change now very expensive. The whole point of what we're saying here is that by cleaning your own oil on the truck with this $1,000, $900 product, you don't have to throw the oil away. You can pay for that expensive oil and just clean it yourself and not have to throw it away. So I make some assumptions here, and I need to bring everybody up to speed with me. But there's no connection between synthetic oil and the OPS. That's by using the OPS, it makes it more affordable to pay that much money for oil because you're not going to throw it away. So that's the clarification I want to make right there. So.
All right, here's another one before we take a break. Just got up for my delivery. Catch you guys on the replay, but I'm waiting to ask this. I'm with a 750 truck fleet. Why wouldn't they use something like this? Well, I can tell you one reason they might not use it is they might not even know about it. I mean,
the biggest reason. Well, no, here's the biggest reason. They have 750 truck drivers.
Well, I was getting there next.
Okay.
But it's very possible that they're not even aware of it because when we, it's a conversation piece on our truck. You open the hood and there's a big neon green filter that looks, what is that? Where'd that come from? And very little people, because we're constantly having to educate people about what it is. So one, they might not even know about it. And if it's a 750 truck fleet, they've got nerds and cubicles with pocket protectors that are not going to allow for an extra $1,000 per truck, because now you're talking $750,000 to outfit this truck. And then the elephant in the room, as Larry so eloquently alluded to, is you got truck drivers to deal with, and now you're going to have to train truck drivers on how to properly take care of. I mean, we got less than 15 trucks, and it's a handle. Imagine having 750 of them and trying to explain to truck drivers, okay, you got to have this filter and you got to do this oil sample and you have to fill this lab form out completely and accurately for it, because without good data, as we'll talk about here in a minute after the break, without good data, your lab form's useless. It's just, you might as well just take the sample and throw it in the trash.
Well, another thing too is a fleet of that size probably replaces their truck. The number used to be 400,000. Now I know it's gone up a little bit because of the price of trucks, but they don't care. This is what gets me about people buying a fleet maintained truck, because it's supposed to be so good. They could give a rat's ass how long it's going to last, because it's always under warranty when they own the truck. And so when it gets out of warranty, they sell the truck. So why do they care about getting 1.85 million miles out of it? They're not, there's no benefit to them for that. So whatever damage they're doing by running it with dirty oil is going to be somebody else's problem, not theirs. You can't, as an owner operator, you do whatever a fleet does, you want to do just the opposite. I can tell you that. Okay. So if your livelihood is on that truck, involved in that truck, you probably do not want to act like fleet, because they do not, so
everybody wants blanket rules. Well, don't lease trucks and don't buy trucks from fleets. There you have it. Unless they've got 1 million miles on them, you can get them for less than $10,000. All right. Well, let's take a break real quick. I want to talk to you about our new sponsor, What Was That Like podcast. We had the host, Scott, on the show last week. And, I love stories and I love podcasts. I've been a podcast guy since 2009. And what's really interesting about this show is it's not the host telling the story. It's him kind of getting out of the way, asking questions and letting people tell their story. And so, you've got titles like Dan was mauled by a grizzly bear, or Diana survived a plane crash, or Whitney was shot 12 times. I mean, they're letting someone tell a horrific story in some cases, or about the person that won over $100,000 in Wheel of Fortune, but they're telling their story, and Scott sits down and just lets them talk and tell it. So I've got a little promo here I'm going to play for you. So I will be back with you in just a minute.
Hello.
Good morning. This is Noonlight calling. We received an alarm from your
Please help me. Please help me.
What's wrong?
Somebody pulled a knife on me and asked to see my kids. And then he asked to touch them. And I'm running and I don't know where it is.
Okay. Can you get to someplace where there's someone at? I'm going to go ahead.
There is nobody out here. I'm in downtown Portland. There's nobody out here.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and send the police. I have your location.
Are you still tracking me?
Yes.
Please stay with me.
Okay. Hold on one moment. I have someone dispatch. Give me just a moment.
I can't run anymore.
I need you to dispatch on this Moonlight. Someone pulled a knife on her. She's running right now. She's on the phone with me.
I see your light.
Try to get to the chevron. Can you see the chevron? Get to the chevron.
There's nobody. I don't know where this guy is.
Okay. Take some deep breaths. Did you stop running, or are you still running?
I can't run anymore. I can't.
Okay, so you by the chevron?
I by the chevron, but I'm scared to just stand here. Sorry.
It's okay. My coworker's on the phone with the police right now. She's by the chevron. Someone pulled a knife on her, and they're chasing her.
He touched me. He fucking touched me. I have a stun gun in my hand, and I couldn't do anything. I was just fucking paralyzed.
Wow, that's intense. So he has all the 911 calls when people go through this stuff, and then he lets them sit down and talk and tell their stories. So you can find the show on any podcast platform, whatwasthatlike.com. So go check them out and let them know that you heard about them on the Blue Ribbon Podcast. So let's move on. So you want to do samples now, or do you want to talk about the form? You talk about the form first?
The form, you mean the lab form?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
Well, I don't think
so. When it comes time to do you install this, and you You use one of your first 3 filters when you install it. Then 25,000 miles later, we're going to do your first service, okay? That service is going to involve changing that green filter, which, by the way, you don't have to pay somebody to do this. If you've got a filter wrench, you can just spin this filter off yourself and put a new one back on if you've got any mechanical ability whatsoever. You don't even have to go to the shop to do this, all right? You can do it yourself. Save that much more money, okay? And then you're going to fill up a little sample bottle with the oil that's in your truck now. And there is a little port on the side of the unit that's spring-loaded. You just screw off the little cap and push in, and it will fill up your little bottle. Now, the engine has to be running, because that's where it gets the pressure from oil pressure. And it'll fill up your little bottle, and then you just put the cap on the bottle, and then you put your little cap back on the port on the side of the thing, and now you have your oil sample. Now, listen to me, I'll tell you this, okay? The quality of what you send the lab affects the quality of what you get back from the lab. It's that old computer terminology, garbage in, garbage out. So a couple of things you want to do. Number one, you want to take that sample at the end of the day after the oil has been circulated all day long. That way, all these parts per million things are floating around in the oil. They're not settled in the bottom of the oil pan, and you're not getting any of them. And the other thing is kind of like when you go do a drug test and they tell you to kind of wipe off where you pee in the bottle. You kind of do that here, okay? Push that in and let some of that oil hit the ground, and then catch what's not been caught in that port for 25,000 miles from the last time you did this. So let that go out. Get nice fresh oil that's being pumped into it now, and then send that to the lab. And then your results are going to be a lot more effective. Here is a copy of what the lab sample order looks like. This is how you order your information from the lab. So on the left right there is a sticker that you fill out to put on the bottle that you put the oil in. You see the little PR, what's it called? CR code, so it's called. And you put your date on there, and you come up with a component ID. Now, let me advise you something here. Come up with a component ID and stick with that, because otherwise you're not going to see the history if you use a different component ID every time you send in a lab sample. So choose something that you're going to stick with.
I would recommend the last 6 of your VIN.
Yeah, last 6 of your VIN is not going to change. And that way, when you get your lab report back, and we'll show you one in a minute, all the previous lab reports are going to show up in that same history. So we want to put that on the bottle that you're going to send in. That's going to identify what sample this came from, who it belongs to. Then you're going to slide over to the right, and you're going to fill out this form. Now, we've blocked off our information because a bunch of you are using my account number for some reason. So we're no longer going to put that out there. But you fill out this top part with your own information. Again, here's where you put in your component ID. If you want to use a secondary ID, I think that's really necessary, but we use the truck number as a secondary ID, and we use the last 6 of the VIN for the component ID. Works very nicely. This lab tests anything, so you have to tell it what this is. This is diesel. This is from a diesel engine. It's not from an automatic transmission. It's not from a planetary. So you have to let it know what's in that bottle. Okay, they don't have any idea what you're sending them unless you tell them that. And then if it's one of those things like a differential, you got to tell it where it came from. Okay, in this case, there's only one engine, and it's in the front. Everybody knows that. So now you fill in this other information here: the date you pulled the sample, the miles that are the fluid time, are the miles that are on the fluid. So in this case, if you just put your unit in and we're doing your very first service at 25,000 miles, guess what? There's going to be about 25,000 miles on the fluid, assuming that you changed it when you put the OPS on. Now, if you didn't change the oil and you're still using oil in there, you need to know when the last time you changed oil was. Because that's what we need to know, is when was the last time this oil was changed? How long has it been in this motor? Because the results of this lab are so they're so detailed that the length of time the oil's in the engine affects the results of the lab sample. So if it's brand new oil, they're going to look at it differently than if it's got 100,000 miles on it. So it's important that you let them know what they're looking at and what condition it is. So if you put the OPS on and don't change your oil, leave the oil in there, which is fine, just let them know how many miles are on it total on the oil. Component time is how many miles since the last overhaul. Okay. So if you've never in-framed your engine, it's going to be your odometer mileage. If you've in-framed your motor, it's whatever the miles are since you did your last in-frame. Okay. And then it asks you, did you change the fluid or did you change the filter? Well, that's just yes or no. If you change the oil, then put yes. If you're going to always change the filter, so that's going to be a yes. And under comments, you're going to have to keep up with how many gallons of oil you've added since the last sample. So this is your first sample. There won't be anything there. But the next sample, assuming you didn't change the oil, they need to know how much new oil was been added to the oil that was in there. Now, look, guys, I get this is all detailed, okay? But, hey, we're all big boys here. This is part of getting the value of the lab sample is giving them this information. The sample is worthless if this information you give them is made up and not accurate, okay? Be like going to get your blood test and you take somebody else's blood in there. You don't know where you got it. I'll pick this up on the street. You know, it's a hooker's blood, but it doesn't work for me. Well, I see why now. You're pregnant. Did you know that? So that's exactly what you're doing here is making sure that they know where this came from and what the conditions are. Then the last thing on there is they need to know what engine it is and specifically what this product is. You know, Shell, Delvac, T6, whatever the product is. Because that's what. Now, here's another thing. You got to decide what kind of oil you're going to use to stick with it. Okay, if you tell them it's got Delvac in it, and the last 2 gallons you added were Shell, guess what? It's not going to look right to them because they have different additive packages. They're going to see stuff. They're going to see that you're pregnant and you're not because you've given them, fluids that aren't yours. Okay. So you have to let them know exactly what's in there. And if you change up brands, it's really going to make it very difficult to have an accurate lab sample. So find a brand and stick with it. Part of the reason why we went to Shell a few years ago is because you could buy it at Walmart for $20. Now it's not the case today. There's a little more strategy involved here to the point where we keep oil with us in the truck because it's hard to find the oil that we use sometimes. So you just can't run around here and just throw a gallon of oil in there, and expect your lab sample to come back and make any sense. Whatever's in there, you need to keep just that in there. Now, if you change it, it doesn't matter. But if you're adding oil to oil that's already existing, you got to stay with the same brand, and then more importantly, you have to stay with the same viscosity. If you're going to tell them it's 5W40 and the last 2 gallons you added were 1540, it's not going to look right. You're going to have a viscosity problem. So all this information has to be accurate, and you have to kind of commit to doing what you're saying you're doing here. You know, using the right brand, the right viscosity. And that way you'll have a benefit, and we're going to show you a real big benefit here in a second. So that's that's how you go about filling out this lab sample. You throw all this in a bag. It's got a prepaid mailer on it. Part of that $55 you're paying for this is the overnight delivery. So you throw it into a FedEx ground box, and they get it the next morning. They pull it out. And here's what happens. If it's normal and there's no problems, they're going to email you back the results in 2 or 3 days. If it's abnormal, somebody's going to call you on the phone and say, hey, you've got a problem. You probably need to go in and get this oil dumped. Now, let me give you a disclaimer right here, okay? I said earlier that OPS was its own company when I got involved with them. And there was a fellow there that his job was to make these phone calls. And the guy was really, really, really knowledgeable about oil samples and about this product. Unfortunately, he passed away about a year ago, and he's no longer with us. Pittsburgh Power, as much as I love them, this is not one of their strengths. Okay, and like most companies, they're CYA here a lot. The guy that's going to call you, his response is going to tell you you need to go dump the oil. And I will tell you right now, in most cases, you do not need to dump the oil. Okay, find out what is flagged, and we're going to show you one of these. Protect yourself if you need to, but I would not automatically go dump the oil. Now, there's some conditions that I would, but when we get to this lab sample, you're going to see that there's 5 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 conditions that the report will come back in. If it's anything except 5, I don't recommend you just go out and dump the oil. Let's find out why. You may want to, like I say, you may want to do some things in the meantime to protect yourself while we figure out what's going on. But the knee-jerk thing of dumping the oil, because here's the problem with dumping the oil, is that if you haven't fixed the problem, you're going to dump it again in 25,000 miles. So we need to find what the problem is. That's the reason I don't agree with that. But they don't have a lot of experience with reading oil samples. Oh, by the way, the company we use is Horizon. Is that right? No, but what's the company?
Polaris.
Polaris. Thank you. Polaris Lab. The one we use is Indianapolis. You don't have to be an OPS customer to use them. You can do your own lab samples if for whatever reason you want to do that. But they also offer a online training for all this analysis. If you really want to understand oil samples, you can sign up for an online class, and they will teach how to read oil samples and how to do all this. Another thing that we can announce right now is I think it's March the 10th, Chris. It is. What we've got a date coming up.
Yeah,
we're
going to have an expert from Shell Rotella on the show on March 10th.
Technical person.
Yeah.
So you guys could probably ask a lot of questions about that. Now I don't know what they know about lab samples, but they'll know a lot about oil. So,
all right. All right. So here is an oil sample. Okay. Now the reason I brought this one up first is well, come on now. There we go. There it is. This is Mercedes-Benz. This is Larry's truck, Metro. All right. Now, you can see here, this was sampled August 28th of 2020. It was received August 31st. Now, something y'all need to understand is when you take that sample, put it in the box. Don't drive around with it for 4 or 5 days before you send it off. Every truck stop has a FedEx or a UPS box. Do not wait around.
It can't go UPS. It has to go FedEx.
I know, but the labels used to be UPS, now they're FedEx. But I'm just saying, there's a box there at the truck stop, and you can do this while you're getting fuel. It's not a big deal. It's best to do it at the end of the day after the engines run all day. But if you don't, this received here is going to be highlighted in red because they're going to point out to you that the sample had degraded from the time you took it until they received it. So now this one came in at abnormal, and there's some interesting things about this oil sample. It came in at a level 3, right? We can see that right here. All right.
So 0 and 1 are completely normal. They're expecting, and they got what they expected to get. 2 and 3 are abnormal in that there's some things in there that some levels are elevated. 4 is critical. That's the one where they're going to call you. You're going to want to dump that oil because it's to the point where it is causing damage. So
now, here's a couple of interesting things about this one. All right. So number one, you can see here that there have been 40 samples, right? This is sample number 40 on this truck. And you can see here, we got unit time. And this number right here, I think it'll let me highlight. Okay. So this column for unit time, 1,807,247 miles unit time. And right beside that, we had 231,500 lube time. So there was 231,000 miles on that oil, 1.8 million miles on the engine. We came over here, and here's part of how these have these corresponding collars. And we had the base number.
Excuse me a second. By the way, collar is West Virginia for color.
Okay. Thank you for your service.
Not
The
my place.
color here is, it shows you in the green and the yellow and the orange. Okay. Here's the example I'm going to use right here. We saw the base number starting to get flagged. See how it's going down? It's a 402, and then it's 446, and then it's going down. The base, that's what he was talking about before. That's when your base is low, you don't have something there to fight off the acid. Okay. Well, look over here. So we're back to, we've got the unit time and the lube time. Now look right here. Lube added, there were 5 gallons of oil added between oil changes. At that time, that truck had a serious and significant oil leak that, by the way, only Carl Bonecutter could fix. Carl was the one that found it and fixed it. Because there was a point not long before this, we were thinking, okay, we're at 1.6, 1.7 million. We might be getting to the point we're going to have to rebuild this truck because of all this oil. Well, Carl found the oil leak and fixed it. So if you look at the very next sample, there was 0 oil added between 1,785,000 and 1,807,000. 0 oil. So we fixed the oil, and the truck did not use any oil. That's where our base problem was starting to happen.
That's why the base went down, because the extended drain will make your base go lower. That's why adding oil is good for it, because it keeps all your additive package up. So here's a case like you would have if you have a new truck where you don't use any oil. Well, scroll over there. If you don't use any oil, your base is going to deplete as your extended drain goes on. So the way we had to fix it back then was we had to put oil in it. Well, now you can use this base boost product, add that to it, and it'll raise that base right back up. Base is all there is to base is, what's that little tablet you take, Tums?
Yeah.
You could throw a Tums tablet in there and do the same thing. It's an anti-acid. That's all it is.
So we'll show you this stuff up here in a minute in more detail, but I wanted to show this one just because it had, it shows that there were 40 samples done in this truck. There's the proof in the pudding. 1.8 million miles on that engine with 40 samples done. All right. Now we'll show you one where we had it was the one I talked about earlier in the show, where we realized immediately that we had a big problem. And here it is. Let's put this one up here. All right. So, well, I'm trying to do the wrong thing. So here we go. All right. Take it from there, Ray.
Okay. So we know, there's different sections of this oil sample that you want to read. Some of them are more important than others. Contaminant metals is a big one. That's where if you have the engine down or you've run it without an air filter in it, that silicone number right there is going to go way up. That's just dirt. That's all it is. All right. Mm-hmm. So over there to the left where you see the wear metals, those, as you see, the iron, those things are going to elevate. Understand that's parts per million. When you're extending drains, you're going to pick up a few of these. These numbers are going to go up. That's why they're still green and orange, because they're not to the point where it's a problem. All right. Now, you guys that are running catalyst, that iron number is going to keep going up. Okay. And we expect that. It's not a problem. So don't freak out. You guys are running catalyst. This truck never saw catalyst because the catalyst didn't exist back when this truck was running. So, but getting back to the contaminant metals, so you see the silicon column is normal, so there's no dirt in the motor. But you see here where the sodium and potassium together, and one of them is raised to the red level. When you have sodium and potassium together, that's coolant. Okay, that's exactly what antifreeze is made out of. So we now know that this truck had coolant intrusion during that particular oil sample. And it got better, and then it got better. So whatever it is we were fixing, I guess is the one we put a head gasket on, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now we know we have a problem. We know the problem exists way before it's a big problem. Okay. When it turned red, we dump the oil because we have excess coolant in that oil. It's going to damage. That's where this lead's coming from, is because that excess coolant starting to damage, and you're starting to get some what's the word? Not leakage, but leaching of this lead out of the bearings, because that's what antifreeze does. It ruins the bearings. So, but you can see here where we fixed the problem, and now the oil sample after that is almost back down to normal. So again, it's proof that you have a problem. You've now fixed the problem, and you know for a fact that the problem is fixed. And you know the problem happened within 25,000 miles. So it gives you this ability to verify that the problem is there and that the problem now has been fixed. The other things you want to watch for are down there under contaminants section: fuel dilution, soot, and water. Okay, fuel dilution is just what it says. If you have a streaming injector, that number is going to go up. If you guys have got Detroits, if you've got that fuel pump O-ring that goes between it and the block starts to leak, you're going to gradually get that number is going to elevate. Soot, it comes from incomplete combustion. So if you don't have good combustion, soot, if you're idling a lot in the wintertime, soot could go up, especially if you're idling at low RPMs.
Bad overhead.
Exactly. And of course, water is this water. Condensation in the fuel uses where water is coming from. So, but again, you had the chance to see all these numbers in real time, and you know what. Now, part of this is it will give you some, under the comments up there, it will give you some typical sources of the problem. Like in this case, it says flag data does not indicate an immediate need for maintenance action. Continue to observe the trends. I can't read it, Chris. Potassium's at a moderate level, could be a coolant indicator. So they're telling you right there where to start looking. Now, these not necessarily always right, but they get you in the right direction. If you got a decent mechanic that can do some diagnostics.
And these comments are for sample number 9. So what if I could go back and get you sample number 7, it would say you have an immediate problem. You need to, the comments would be different. These comments are for sample number 9. But it's just such a great record because you can see here the 5th sample was on May 18th of 2020. The 6th one was July 24th, and the 7th, so forth. So it gives you that historical record that you can go back and look at. And like I say, we've got 40 samples on that Mercedes truck.
And again, you see the advantage of using the same component ID because now all the history comes on every sample. You see the previous 5. There's 3 or 4 pages of this. This is just the first page, but the other pages have more information about the history and stuff like that. So, but this is the benefit, guys. This is, I mean, if you're using synthetic oil right now and changing your oil every 15, 20,000 miles, that's fine. You're throwing money away, but most truck drivers throw money away anyway. Just follow them around for a while and you'll see. But if you're not doing this lab sample, how do you have a problem when the thing blows up, as opposed to when the thing first starts and you can jump on it and diagnose it and find the problem and fix it before it becomes an issue. So that's why we're bringing this up. It's one thing to buy the LPS and put it on there, but if you're not doing all these other things and taking advantage of the program, you're really not getting your money's worth. You're not getting a big benefit here. Again, there's 3 benefits here. All right. You're going to keep your oil clean all the time. You're going to extend the life of your components because of that, and you're going to save money. So a combination of those 3 things make this thing such a no-brainer.
The last one we've got here to show you is one that we wanted to show you because we saw fuel dilution, and it was red. And on this truck, this was a truck that it was the fuel pump. The Detroit, the fuel pump is connected to and driven by the air compressor. And when that seal goes bad on that fuel pump, it will it'll put the fuel, it'll let the fuel get into the oil through the compressor. And we ended up, I think we also ended up putting a set of injectors in this truck as well, because it kind of lingered around for a while and then cleared itself up. But again, you know, there's a lot of times with fuel dilution, you'll not notice that your truck is running bad. It could be getting good fuel. This was a Volvo, so I mean, this thing's a fuel mileage machine as long as you drove it right. Ran great, but there was no issue or there was no indication otherwise that we had a fuel dilution problem until we got this oil sample. And that's when we realized, oh my gosh, we got a big problem. We need to fix it. So in this case, we immediately dumped the oil. And then that's where you see it, you know, went from 10 to 3.8. And then it started creeping its way back up. And we're like, okay. Then we tried the fuel pump and it fixed it. So, you know what? No, I've got this wrong. That first one, that top one, the 4.8, was when we changed the fuel pump. And then it went to 2.7. And then all of a sudden it went to 10. That's when we put a set of injectors in it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we didn't know what it was. It could have been a cup and injector, but since it was going to cost the same pretty much to do either one, we just put the injectors in.
Yeah.
Just so we wouldn't have to tear it down again. So
yeah. On the DDEC 4 Detroits, you have to remove the head to do injector cups. On the DDEC 5s, they can come out from the top. So, you know, if you're going to do cups, you better be damn sure on a DDEC 4 or older that's the problem, because it's a big job. The head's got to come off. On a DDEC 5, it's not a big deal. You can just screw them out from the top. So,
can you imagine, guys, if you guys bought a truck and you got 1.8 million miles out of it? Okay, number one, just think about that. Okay, just think about that. All right, and number two, in the course of getting 1.8 million miles, you saved $150,000 in oil that you didn't throw down the drain. I mean, we talk over that like it's not a big deal. Like we're going to whatever is important. Let me just say that again. You know, 1.8 million miles without tearing the engine down, okay, and saving $150,000 that I would have thrown down the drain if I'd done it like everybody else does. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not a genius. I listen to other people, but I do listen. Yeah. Unlike some people here that are commenting, I do listen, you know, and I do have the ability to learn, and I do have the ability to reason and critical think. Where did I hurt my engine by not changing? Because that's the thing we get from most people. It's just like the guys who want to talk about how overinflating the tires is going to be a problem, and all the other myths out there. Oh, if you don't change your oil, you're going to ruin the motor. Well, I got 3 times out of my motor that most people do out of one. Mm-hmm. 3 times, all right? And in the meantime, I saved my... Now, I wonder if the people who sold oil or sold oil changes would agree that I got the 1.8 million miles by not using their services. I just wonder. I mean, you just think about that, okay? I'm thinking about that train wreck up in Ohio right now. Just think about, you know, anyway. The question you had, Evan, was about Pittsburgh Power sells the product. I've already explained to you. I don't think they understand it as well as OPS people did, but they bought it. No, if you want to learn how to read oil samples, you need to contact Polaris and they'll teach you how to read the sample.
Yeah, they've got webinars and videos and information on their website because they're the lab. Pittsburgh Power is just they're the distributor of the product.
They supply the product, okay, but they are certainly, in my opinion, not an expert on reading lab reports. You know,
I mean, Tom Bach forgot more than most people will ever know about oil samples.
He's the guy that passed away that we used to.
He was fantastic. And that's just that next level customer service. I mean, Pittsburgh Power really is in a position they have to do that because Tom set that precedent. Mm-hmm. You know, but for years. I mean, first time I met Tom was at the truck show in 2019, and it was like, yeah, if you have a bad oil sample, you're going to get a phone call, and it's going to be Tom. You know, he was the guy, and so now that's an expectation precedent that he set. that you've got to give people a phone call, because I remember listening to Kevin's show back in the day, and he would read oil samples but there's so much information there in that oil sample that helps you make decisions, not I feel like, or I think, or somebody told me. It's using data and information to make an informed decision instead of just standing back throwing parts at it. But, again, here's all these examples that had we not been doing samples, we never would have known that we had these problems, and we were able to fix them without catastrophic damage to the engine. That sells it right there. Then you have the filtration, you have all those other benefits, but the ability to see to understand what's happening inside that engine while you're going down the road. And if you're working full time, you're going to pull a sample every 9 or 10 weeks. Now, did you create a slide or anything for the maintenance schedule that we use?
I do. I don't think I shared it though, Chris. How can I do that? I can do it. I can do it. I can do
it. Phil says, will TA Petro improve under new ownership? No. I'm going to say no. British Petroleum has not ever shown me anything that leads me to believe in any way, shape, form, or fashion that they're going to do a better job than TA Petro did. I find that hilarious.
Chris, I pulled this out of Dropbox. I one of the trucks, so you probably can do it just as quick as I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me
I pulled it out of 031, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. You go to Dropbox and
so we're going to share with you our maintenance interval, okay? So that you can kind of see what we do and how we do it.
All right. Un momento, por favor. And here we go. Let me zoom that in a little bit. Okay, so here's let's start here. So here's the sequence. We have we came up with it, Larry came up with these letters, A, B, C, and D, right? We're going to do something to the truck every 12,500 miles. So here is, let me get my mouse to cooperate with me. There we go. All right, this is our A service. All right, every 12,500 miles, we are going to do a chassis lube. We're going to check the gearbox levels. Now, at TA and Petro and just about everywhere else, checking the gearboxes is part of their standard service, and it even says it right there. When they type in chassis lube, it says right underneath, checking gearbox levels is included. Do not let them double charge you because the amoeba running the keyboard doesn't know that that's included. Then we tell the drivers to top off the fluid, check and inflate the tires, check oil in the front hubs, drain the air dryer system, and add a gallon of Lucas fuel treatment. So that's our A service. Then another 12,500 miles go by, and we're going to do what's called a B service. That, we're going to do everything that we did in A, but now we're going to change the green OPS filter because we've gone 25,000 miles. We're going to take the oil sample, send it in immediately, check the oil level in the front hubs, check all the tires for unusable wear patterns, and drain the air dryer system. Then another 12,500 miles goes by, and we do another A, another chassis lube, another gallon of Lucas. Then, now we've gone 50,000 miles, and we're going to do a C service. And this is where we're going to change the OEM filters. So on our 14 liters and 12.7 Detroits, we're going to change the factory filters and the OPS, and we're going to take a sample, and we're going to clean our fleet air filter, and we're going to rotate the steer tires if the tread depth difference is over 10%, because you're going to eat that right front tire faster than you do the left. So
we do because we align them that way. Everybody
Right.
might not, but we align our trucks to run straight, so it scrubs the right front tire 10%. Now, one exception to this OEM filter is if you have a Davco type filter,
Yeah.
you can't necessarily just go 50,000 miles. Obviously, it tells you when to service that by the level in the glass. So that would be outside of this. You need to continue to service that Davco at whatever level it tells you to. But if it's spin on filters, then they'll go 50. Now, if you're not getting 50,000 miles out of a fuel filter, then you've got issues. You've got problems in your fuel, probably algae or asphaltene or some kind of issue. So,
so then after the C, then we'll go back and we'll do another A. Another 12,500 miles go by. And then we're back to the B and back to the A and back to the C. Then when we get to 100,000 miles, we're going to check. And now we run super singles. So we're going to check those and X-rotate those if needed. We're going to load test our batteries and clean all the terminals. We're going to service the air dryer. And we're going to replace all 6 shocks, the cab shocks, and we're going to do an overhead. So this gives us an opportunity every 12,500 miles to have the opportunity for a certified mechanic to be under the truck that, could look and tell us if they saw something, but most of them are deaf, dumb, and blind. But every 12,500 we're doing something. Every 25,000 we're doing an oil sample. Every 50,000 we're changing the factory filters. And every 100,000 we're putting on a set of shocks, servicing the air dryer, and doing an overhead. That's our basic ABCD maintenance schedule. Now, Evan had a question. Would you approve your drivers doing some of these services? Yes and no. If you demonstrate to me that you have the ability to do this, yes, because changing an OPS filter is not rocket science. You need a filter wrench. You need to screw it off, screw it back on. It's really not all that complicated. We're getting to a point where we can't trust that these A-service chassis lubes are getting done. We're paying for them, but there's been too many times that a truck has come in and Carl hasn't seen it for a few months, and he'll be like, well, hey, every U-joint on this truck's dry, and every slack adjuster's dry, and I'm like, well, dude, we just had it greased. But I'm thinking because it's such a low cost. I mean, hell, we had one done at a Love's or a Speedco the other day. It was like $30. They just don't care. They're not getting enough money, I guess, is their stupid reasoning. But you are going to have to, again, our drivers, okay, are participants in a program that's teaching them how to become a successful owner-operator. A successful owner-operator is going to be watching to make sure that the person that they just paid to do something has actually done it. So you're going to have to get your eyes out there and scope around, and when they get done doing a service, you look underneath the truck, and if it's not greased, go back in there and tell them to do it again. Because you cannot blindly trust that they're going to do it. We've just seen that too many times. What about auto grease system? I've only seen this on one truck, and I don't trust it.
Well, you can't auto grease U-joints.
Correct. You cannot auto grease your U-joints.
And I don't think you can auto grease slack adjusters.
I don't know. When we went to Michigan that time and looked at those gliders, they all had that automatic system on them. Mm-hmm. And I said, Carl, what do you think about that? And he just looked at it and laughed. So Ronnie was asking, you spoke about Carl, how's he doing? He's doing okay. He is going to have a double lung transplant. That's coming at some time soon. And so they're trying to prepare for that. He's got some guys working for him. He really can't do much. He can supervise. That's about it. Because he's got to have oxygen all the time. But he's hanging in there. But he's got a long way to go.
Speaking of this, I'm gonna say this, Chris, and plug in. Guys, he's got to GoFundMe. He's got to come up with $25,000 before they'll even get him considered to do this of his own money. He's got a GoFundMe page set up on Facebook. If you guys who know Carl and have used him and you care to help him out, you could do so, and I'm sure that it would be appreciated. So
let me see if I can find that real quick, if my computer will cooperate with me. Keep talking while I look at that.
So,
dead.
I mean, look, I know we sell OPS systems, but understand our relationship with Pittsburgh Power is a result of my being a customer of theirs from 2009. Our relationship is as we talk about them. We were talking about them before we got paid to talk about them. Okay. And probably talked about them more because that was early on, and that's what we were telling people to do, is how to do things the way we do. That's part of being a lunatic. So we're not, I'm not promoting this to get you to buy it. I'm promoting it to get you to understand that you can, it's all about lowering your cost of doing business. And if you can lower your maintenance cost $150,000 over the life of a truck, that's serious money. That will replace a truck. And so, and what are you missing by doing this? You miss throwing oil down the drain. And by the way, you're much more likely to not need an engine because you know what's going on inside of them. So, we're not here trying to peddle, OPS systems. We have them because we firmly believe in them. Every truck that we own has one. Every truck I'll ever own will have one. It's probably the single thing that we do that gets the fastest return on investment, because in 3 oil changes it's paid for, and from that point on you're saving money, and you're saving money from here on out. And remember, it's not just the money, it's the money that you're saving by not having catastrophic breakdowns in the engine because you didn't know that you had an injector streaming. That's the big thing. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
So here's the I put the link in the comment, but they've got to have $25,000 cash, and I guess it's to cover travel expenses, because Nicole's going to have to go up there and basically live with him for 2 or 3 months. So she's not going to be able to work, and so they're going to have to pay for their living expenses and mortgage and all that kind of stuff, and and it's a pretty scary deal. But he's Carl. He's tougher than a pine knot. And I was telling I shared it on my Facebook, and I said, look, occasionally an opportunity comes along to help someone and possibly save their life. And I see these GoFundMe's all the time, but when you got somebody like Carl that I've literally watched work 24 hours straight, and because he just won't quit, he will not quit until the job is done. And I've never met anybody like him. And, fortunate to call him a friend. And we sit around and go, with Carl being compromised, it's like, what are we going to do? So if y'all feel led to do so, go over there and, $25, $50, I don't know, send him $10,000, whatever you feel like. So, but y'all go help him out.
We have another. We're starting our second masterclass next weekend. So we'll be in West Virginia next weekend. We'll be doing this again on Friday night live. But we're starting 3 new folks in the program. We do have quite a few people who are offering for us to take trucks. Imagine that. Yeah. So, we're gonna take them if we think that they're people we want to work with, and so we still have an opportunity here, guys. If you want to look at being in our program and learn how to be a lunatic from the ground up, and develop the skills and the habits over the time it takes to get to the program, go to our website, and it's Lunatic Masterclass at BlueRibbonLogistics.com. All the details are there. The next class we're going to start will be right after the truck show, probably the first or second week in April will be our next class. By then, I'll have a few of these trucks that people are trying to give us. So if you have any interest in learning how to do this and how to go in business and stay in business, not make the mistakes that most people do, then check us out.
I got an email this week because FreightWaves had sent out this survey owner operator survey. And I thought, well, hell, I'll fill it out. Why not? And it got to a point, it's asking all these questions about, you know, how'd you do and what was your numbers and, you know, what do you think about the health of the industry? And then it left a space open to comment. And I said, well, as soon as all these idiots bought these $250,000 trucks go out of business, we'll be fine. That earned me a phone call. So I had a 10 or 15-minute phone call with one of the people at FreightWaves. And it was a fascinating conversation because he dug in, you know, he went to the website, he read through the master class, he, you know, oh, you're leased a Landstar, and he's telling me all this stuff. I can tell that he's actually gone to the website, and he's like, well, it's just really strange. I've never seen anything like this. And I said, well, you know, he's like, do you think are you getting more responses? And I said, well, I need to be completely transparent with you. We spent some money for TikTok, and it's, you know, the numbers have gone up crazy, you know. But at the same time, we are seeing people come in because we have said for a while, we kind of needed the market to crash to prove the model, you know, that when everybody around us are freaking out, losing their minds, and I'm going home and I'm going to sell my truck and I'm not, you know, and we're still here and we're still profitable and we're still making money and we'll still be here as all the dead carcasses are left strewn about from all these carriers, you know, that went out of business, and we'll still be here, you know, and that's why we do this. So if you want to learn, go to the website, blueribbonlogistics.com, click on Lunatic Masterclass. All the details are there. All your questions should be answered. And then if you've just, you know, been minding your own business this evening and you stumbled across the Blue Ribbon podcast, well, go watch a few others because we talk about this stuff a lot. There's lots of different products. This is episode 150, so there's plenty of them to keep you busy for a while. I would suggest you go through and just start about 49. That's when Larry came in, and that was August of 19, you know, and just you know, you ain't got nothing better to do. You're just driving, you know. They're on YouTube. They're on any podcast platform you want to find. Go listen to the audio. The audio's all there. I'm actually keeping up with them. And just take your time and let it sink in. Because we get a handful of emails every week, and I'm thinking, well, if you'd have just watched 3 podcasts, that question would have been answered. Yeah. But you're being a little bit lazy and you're wanting to skip to the head of the line. Well, take your time. There's plenty of content out there. We've answered every question 5 or 10 times. So I promise you, you can find what you're looking for.
There's one question we didn't answer. Let me find it. It's from Willie Nelson.
That one?
Willie, Jefferson Ocean.
I forgot to grab my blue ribbon or my blue moon on the way in here. So I may have one when we're done.
Actually, this particular Jefferson's Ocean was a Christmas gift from Mr. Chris.
Yes, it was.
Cheers.
Voyage number 26?
26? No, 26.
Yeah.
I now have, I started with Voyage 24 with Jefferson. I now have up to 28. So I've got...
Well, you know, here in West Virginia, we have some really, really, really high class liquor stores. And
yeah, you do.
So I found that at Walgreens.
I thought you were going to say hookers there for a while. But...
Well, no, I promise you we don't have those. But I found that I was at Walgreens buying something. One of the kids was sick or something. I looked behind the counter. I'm like, oh, Jefferson's Oak. I need one of those.
Well, it's funny because the guy who manages the hotel that we use, Wyndham, he tries to keep a selection of top shelf bourbons for me, and he's having trouble getting Blanton's right now. So he goes, you know, that guy told me he could get me some Jefferson's Ocean. I said, dude, you can get Jefferson's Ocean at Walgreens up here.
Yeah.
Don't let him say you that for a big price, okay?
Yeah. Go get it. It's like $100 at Walgreens. Go get it over there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're going to, like I said, we're going to be in West Virginia next weekend. Good thing about doing these on Friday night, though, it doesn't affect this. We'll be there, but it'll still happen same time. same bat time, same bat station, right? So, and Steve's Crone. Well, we're going to talk to Steve. We got he's on our list.
Yeah,
He's
we've
on our
been
list.
trying to
Mhm.
catch.
We had him lined up at one point in time, and something happened, and we couldn't do it. And then I ran into him at BCO days in Indianapolis back earlier in I guess it was fall of last year. And I talked to him for a long time, and he said, "Yeah, I'll still do it." So, but Steve's he's a unique guy. He's not a full-time driver anymore, for sure. So his time is very valuable. So we've got to make sure. At the time, we were doing them on Sunday nights at that time, and I don't think that was the best night for him. So as we talked about having to record it, and I really would rather him be on live because I knew you guys would have a ton of questions. So now that we moved to Friday night, maybe we can get him going. So we are, against my better judgment.
Here we go.
We are going to have the Reset Your Mindset 2023 live event. I'm going to be talking with the hotel this weekend. My guess is it's probably going to be in August, is my guess. July's out because we run up against too many other events. Expedite goes on in July. Walcott, Iowa goes on in July. And so and it hurts us when we try to get support from vendors. June is out of the question for various reasons. And April, May are just too quick. So my guess is going to be August. We'll have a firm announcement coming soon, but it looks like we're probably going to have it again in West Virginia, only because I can't beat the deal,
Right.
So and we've got people there that just want us to have it there. So, but anyway. We're going to do a little different format this year. We're going to have, speaking of Steve Crone, we're going to have some people do some, present some things. And it's not just going to be me for 2 days, thank God. And so it'll be a little different format than in the past, but we'll put the announcement. If you don't know what it is, it's our live event. It's a Saturday and Sunday seminar where we teach what we do, and then also bring in other people that will be of interest for you to hear what they do, best practices kind of thing. Nice networking deal. We'll put some pictures up from last year's. We got a lot of nice images. I haven't talked to any of the vendors yet, but if you guys are listening, Rocky and those guys, if you guys want to come back and do, last year we had MD Alignment there, and of course Carl was doing some work last year. We probably won't have him this year, but we've got another shop there that we're going to talk to this weekend about coming. So anyway, we'll announce it, but be looking at your calendar in early August as a possible date. So it'll all be good.
All righty. Well, I think we've covered it all. So, go to the website, to the store if you're interested in OPS. We got the starter kits. We've got filters. We've got sample kits, max mileage. So you can get them from us, and we will ship them to you. If you need max mileage, just go on the website and order it. Holler at me, and I'll come meet you in Hurricane or whatever. And again, go check out Carl's GoFundMe if you feel led to give a little bit, help him out. But until next Friday night, y'all be good and be safe. We'll see you next time.
Have a good week, guys. Be safe.